Are you like me? Do you like to imagine that you lived at the Dakota way back when and had neighbors like John Lennon and Lauren Bacall and Judy Holliday and Boris Karloff and so many other creative and brilliant men and women? Have you ever daydreamed about what it was like to be one of the first residents to live there in the late 1800s? And entering through the main entryway in your horse-drawn carriage? If so, you are not alone. Simply put, nobody in the United States ever lived like that before. You see, in the 1880s, life in the Dakota apartment building was a unique blend of opulence and urban pioneering. As one of New York City's first luxury apartment buildings, the Dakota attracted affluent residents who were drawn to its modern amenities and its grand architectural style. Among the first residents of the Dakota were prominent and affluent individuals who were drawn to its luxurious accommodations and modern amenities. Also, many of them weren't really welcome anywhere else. You see, one notable aspect of early Dakota residents is that none of them came from old money. They were self-made. Consequently, one reason they chose to live in the Dakota was because they were not accepted by the elite circles of the Astors and others, who viewed them as, you ready for this? Working class. Ironically, despite often having more wealth than the old money crowd, they were still looked down upon. Those people were just snooty. And so had you lived at the Dakota in the early days, some of your neighbors would have included members of the Steinway family. As you may know, the Steinway family is renowned for founding and building the Steinway & Sons Piano Company, which is recognized for producing some of the finest pianos in the world. Some of the family stayed in Germany, while others immigrated to the United States. Gustav Schirmer lived at the Dakota. He was the founder of a classical music publishing company. One of his many guests was hosting Tchaikovsky in the spring of 1891 when he was invited to visit the United States on the occasion of the inauguration of Carnegie Hall in New York City. The daughters of Thomas Adams lived there. Thomas Adams? Who is Thomas Adams? Well, their father was a 19th century American scientist and inventor who played a significant role in establishing the chewing gum industry. Yep, you heard that right. Look, somebody had to do it. One of your neighbors also would have been Frederick Bourne. He was president of the Singer Sewing Machine Company from 1889 to 1905. Known as Commodore, he started his career modestly and rapidly rose to become president of Singer, significantly contributing to the company's success. Check this out, an apartment in the Dakota was always reserved for whoever was and would be the president of the Singer Sewing Machine Company. Probably not the case these days, but way back when, if you were president of the Singer Sewing Machine Company, that would have been one of your perks. Equestrian C. Francis Bates was a resident of the Dakota. He was a major winner at the National Horse Show in 1887, where his horses won several ribbons and significant prize money. John A. Browning was the founder of the Browning School in 1888. The school was known for its strong emphasis on personal attention, extracurricular activities, and fostering a lifelong love of learning. Exactly what a school should be. Do you like shoes? Most people like shoes, right? Well, guess what? If you lived at the Dakota way back when, one of your neighbors would have been Alfred Kammeyer. Kammeyer? Kammeyer. Oh God, I don't know. Cammeyer. You got Meyer, like Meyer Lansky, okay. So Kammeyer. Alfred Kammeyer. I have no idea. If anybody out there has the name Kammeyer, kindly let me know in the comments below how to pronounce your name. Anyway, Alfred was a prominent shoe merchant and owner of the largest shoe store in the country. Feel free to leave your foot fetish jokes in the comments below. Also, Edward S. Clark had an apartment in the Dakota. No, that was not the builder of the Dakota. That was Edward C. Clark. Edward S. Clark was his grandson, but he did not live at the Dakota full time, especially in the early years since he inherited the Dakota when his grandfather died, and Edward S. Clark was only 12 years old. How would you like to be 12 years old and inherit the Dakota? And he kept it his entire life. It was his, all his. Imagine you're Edward S. Clark and you want to pick up a girl, ask her out on a date, and she says, "Hey, Edward, where are we going to go?" And you say, "Oh, I've got this apartment that my grandfather left me." "Oh, really?" "Yes, would you like to come over for tea and scones?" "Yes, Edward, I would." And then Edward would bring her to the Dakota. I'd say that would seal the deal. Anyway, he didn't spend much time at the Dakota. He spent most of his time in Cooperstown, New York. Julius Hammerslau was a Dakota resident. He was one of the few Jewish individuals to personally know Abraham Lincoln before his presidency. The German-born clothing merchant was notably the first Jewish resident of Springfield, Illinois, and he maintained a friendly relationship with both Abraham and Mary, that would be his wife, and his close association with the Lincolns included attending Lincoln's first inauguration, and frequently visiting and advising Lincoln at the White House. In 1865, when Lincoln's body was brought home for burial, Hammerslough met the casket in Chicago and traveled with it back to Springfield. That's a good friend. William Arbuckle Jameson was a Dakota resident. He was head of Arbuckle Brothers, a coffee and sugar refining company that was founded by his Uncle John. The next Dakota resident that I want to tell you about died in a very interesting way. Check this out. George D. Barrymore, a successful hop dealer and son of diamond merchant James Barrymore, met a tragic end during the Great Blizzard of 1888. The blizzard, which struck New York City and the surrounding region from March 11th to March 14th of 1888, was one of the most severe in recorded history, with snowdrifts reaching up to 50 feet and winds exceeding 45 miles per hour. Mr. Barrymore had tried to reach his office at 3 Water Street on the morning of March 12th, despite his wife's pleas for him to stay home due to the storm. For those who don't know, 3 Water Street is about as far away from the Dakota as you could possibly get. Why in the world this guy chose to go to work that day, I'll never know. But after attempting to navigate the storm, he returned home, only to set out again, determined to reach his office. According to his clerks, he arrived at the office around 3 p.m., but left after an hour or so, stating that he needed to get home to avoid worrying his wife and children. You think? Suddenly he's concerned about his wife and children? Should have stayed home, Mr. Barrymore. Anyway, Barrymore likely waited in one of the downtown hotels until the trains were running again. He may have taken a train uptown on the night of March 12th or the early morning of March 13th. Can you imagine what life was like back then? No cell phones, right? This guy left home and had no way to reach his wife to let her know where he was at. Unfortunately, he did not make it home. On the morning of March 14th, 1888, at around 4:45 a.m., police officer Henry Hogg was struggling up 7th Avenue near 53rd Street. Under the elevated tracks, he spotted a man's arm and hand sticking out of the snow in the middle of the road. Hogg kicked away the snow and discovered the man's body, which was frozen and had evidently been there for hours. The man was well dressed, with a gold watch chain around his chest, and his outstretched hand had fingers splayed wide apart. Barrymore had been suffering from severe chest pains for the past year, which caused fainting fits. This condition may have contributed to his inability to survive the storm. Now here's where things get a little bit more interesting. There was initial confusion about the identity of the deceased. A rumor spread that Maurice Barrymore, the actor, yeah, the Barrymores have been around forever, had been found dead in the snowdrift. However, this was soon clarified when Maurice Barrymore arrived at the Hoffman House Hotel at 5 p.m. and he was surprised that everybody thought he was dead. George D. Barrymore's death was a stark reminder of the blizzard's ferocity and the severe conditions that claimed the lives of many during the storm. His determination to return home despite the deadly weather underscores the human stories of perseverance and tragedy that marked the Great Blizzard of 1888. Edward C. Clark, the builder of the Dakota, never lived in his own building. That's because he died halfway through construction in 1882. How sad is that? That's gotta suck, right? Edward C. Clark never even got a chance to see the Dakota completed. That is a big-time tragedy because he was planning to do so. In fact, he had reserved for himself an enormous apartment on the 6th floor overlooking Central Park in order to set an example for other wealthy people like him to want to live there. Moving on to greener pastures, here's a glimpse into the daily life of Dakota residents during that time. They all resided in luxurious living quarters. That's because the Dakota offered spacious apartments with high ceilings, large windows, and elegant finishes. Each apartment was designed with comfort and luxury in mind, featuring elaborate woodwork, marble fireplaces, and state-of-the-art plumbing and heating systems. Residents enjoyed amenities that were cutting edge for the time, including hydraulic elevators. There were also service areas such as a laundry room and storage spaces for coal and firewood. Given the limited development in the area, residents often relied on horse-drawn carriages for transportation. The Dakota residents made use of a local carriage house and stables, reflecting the necessity of maintaining horses for travel. The nearby elevated train provided a more modern and efficient means of commuting to the bustling parts of Manhattan. This made it easier for residents to access workplaces, social venues, and other parts of the city. The Dakota's design encouraged socialization among residents. The building's courtyard and its relatively isolated location fostered a close-knit community. Residents often hosted gatherings and events in their spacious apartments, contributing to an active social life within the building. Living in the Dakota was a status symbol, attracting prominent and wealthy individuals. This created an exclusive and sophisticated social environment where residents mingled with like-minded peers. With few entertainment venues nearby, residents often entertained themselves within the building. This included hosting dinners, musical performances, and literary salons. As there were limited businesses and restaurants in the immediate vicinity, residents would often travel to more developed parts of Manhattan for shopping and dining. Many households employed servants to assist with daily tasks, including shopping for groceries and other necessities. At the time, the Dakota had its very own restaurant. And so if you lived at the Dakota, you would simply go down to the restaurant with your family and guests, and they would seat you in the restaurant located on the southeast corner of the ground floor of the building. And chances are you would already know what you were going to order. That's because earlier in the day, the Dakota sent up menus printed on linen paper and placed them at the front door of each apartment in the building. You gotta admit, that must have been pretty cool. And if you didn't want to go down to eat in the Dakota's restaurant, you actually could have ordered anything they were serving, and staff would not only have brought it up to your apartment, but they would have stayed in your dining room to serve you. The Dakota's architecture, with its intricate detailing and robust construction, was a source of pride for residents. The building's aesthetic appeal and solid construction added to the residents' sense of luxury and security. The Dakota's isolated location at the time provided a quiet retreat for its affluent residents who valued security and privacy. In summary, life in the Dakota in the 1880s and 1890s was marked by luxury, exclusivity, and a pioneering spirit. Residents enjoyed the best of modern amenities while forming a close-knit community in an otherwise undeveloped area of New York City. So, what do you think about life in the Dakota in the late 1800s? If you were rolling in dough back then, would you like to have been one of the first families to live at the Dakota? You know I would. By the way, if anyone watching this video lives in the Dakota, will you kindly invite me over for a visit? I'll even bring the tea and scones. By the way, that offer extends to anybody else who has a cool apartment or house. Just about anywhere in the world. Go on, invite me over. You never know, I might show up. By the way, if you want to support my research and productions, please join me on Patreon and check out the links below so you can buy my books about the architecture and history of the Dakota and other cool buildings. Until next time, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys.